Apparently, according to the clock on the wall, and we've made a point of starting at 8 instead of our normal 8:30 time this day. So it's August 27th, 2020, 8 a.m. as I say. We're in the St. Croix County Government Center in Hudson, Wisconsin. And this is the Zoning Board of Adjustment of St. Croix County. This is, so far as I know, the time and date that was published for purposes of the various laws that apply to notices of meetings like this. If anyone has a reason to think that the meeting was not properly published, please speak up now and we'll address the issue. Does anybody have a reason to think that there was any failure of the published notice? Nope. Well, there usually isn't, but we always need to check. My name is Buck Malick. I'm a resident of the town of Hudson and the chair of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment. I'll ask the other members to identify themselves now, and that way we'll establish a roll call. Mr. Peterson?
Dave Peterson, District 15, County Board, Town of Kinnickinnick.
Joe Miller, citizen member, Town of Hammond.
Dave Nickham, citizen member, Town of Baldwin.
Thank you. Now, there are certain staff members who can be expected to speak sometime during the day, so I'll ask them to identify themselves and we'll test their microphones at the same time.
Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator. And I'll note I have Sarah Burrell and Kevin Graybo here. I'll probably do the presentations, but they may be called upon to answer questions generated by the board or the public.
And if you do call on them, you'll use their name at that time. So we'll get acquainted if and when we need them. And Julie Peterson is our recorder over here, busily at work on other matters as she makes sure the recording works. We have minutes from previous meetings. They will be deemed approved unless anybody has an objection or correction to mention to them. If so, speak at this time. Otherwise, they'll be deemed approved. They are deemed approved. For those of you who are here today for one of our public hearings, before you speak, and you'll speak at the place Mr. Wozniak does, using that microphone, before you speak, sign in on the sign-up sheet that's over on the wall. As you do that, you will attest that your testimony will be true to the best of your belief, according to the terms of the that are on that piece of paper. You want to start well, let's proceed in the same order that things are listed on the agenda. Today we have 4 items. The first item is a continuation of our July 23rd hearing and preliminary decision on a drive-in theater. Mr. Wozniak, do you have anything to say?
I will just get the presentation pulled up here.
Is anybody in the room interested in that particular matter? Anybody here because of that matter? No?
I would note that the applicant and their agent, the agent, Nathan Block, had called in and indicated he had a family matter come up last minute and is not able to be here. And representative of the Trinity Lutheran indicated they will try to make it, but they're not here yet.
Both of those people were aware that at the website there was the material on the county website. There was the material that you're about to present, I suppose.
They were aware of the meeting, yes.
Did they state any objection to you?
No, they've not indicated any objections.
Okay. but the representative of the church indicated that he planned to be here.
He indicated, I believe, I just received a last minute communication from Sarah Burrell on our staff that he did indicate he would try to get here, but again, is not here at this time.
All right, in any event, you can make an unusually abbreviated presentation, I think, just pointing out, since we, the board, are familiar with the matter, and there's nobody in the room to hear what you present, in that the church's representative is not currently here, you can give us, please, a very abbreviated presentation highlighting only the differences
Yes.
from what we dealt with last month.
Okay, I'll get started with that. We're dealing with today a proposal for a reconsideration of a proposal, just specific issues related to drive-in movie theater at 1433 Main Street, town of St. Joseph. This is in a commercial district. I'll note pursuant to section 17.18, paragraph 12 of the St. Croix County zoning ordinance. The proposal, Nathan Block is proposing to lease and operate the drive-in movie theater, as you were briefed in your consideration of this item last month. And basically, it's reopening of the drive-in movie theater that's hasn't operated for 30 years, so it's essentially a new proposal that the Board of Adjustment was substantially comfortable with. There were a few issues that the idea was should receive a little further thought and discussion. So that's why this item is under consideration today. I would note on this that you have in your packet, in the staff report, and some submittal information, basically suggestions on revisions to findings of fact, and also staff recommendation that would slightly revise the action you would take for approval or adjustment of your prior approval of this drive-in movie theater proposal. Now I note, and so you can hear me a little better, I'll remove my mask. On this, just going to get to the heart of this. There were just a few issues. Let's see if we can key in on those. Just bear with me a moment so I can abbreviate my presentation here. Well, again, just to clarify the request, what was considered last month involved the proposal to operate the movie theater really in April 1st to the end of October timeframe, and anticipate hours of operation 7 p.m. to 1 to 2 a.m. and a.m. Prior to showtime, the agent has asked to be able to have some live music, but that wouldn't go any later than 10 p.m. Per the preference of the Board of Adjustment last month.
Excuse me for interrupting. It's 8:09, and I believe I see that the church's representative has arrived. So,
very good.
For the record, he is here. No, not a problem, but it does help solve a problem for us of knowing how detailed to make this presentation. Would you mind stepping up to the microphone and identifying yourself again? No one else in the room seems to be here on account of this matter. So I have a sense that it's not necessary to get into the details that we talked about last time, and I had directed Mr. Wozniak to only talk about the differences. what is the, well, first of all, identify yourself for the record.
So I'm Bob Eiselt, and I'm the administrator for Trinity Lutheran Church. And unfortunately, Nathan Block, who is going to be the operator, had a family matter pop up very suddenly, and he's not able to be here today.
It's not required that he be here. Are you aware that he had any objection to the staff proposal that has been provided to us all?
I believe we had worked out all the details with community development, and so it was a matter of just running back those revisions past the board today.
And is that the church's position too, that you would be comfortable with what the staff has recommended?
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you. If you'll just stand by, we'll go back to Mr. Wozniak. Now, I notice that there is a change with respect to the operating hours of the sound system, a change with respect to abandoning the idea of using the southern driveway.
Correct.
And are there any other changes?
I think the other issue, there's one other change I'd call out. We slightly adjusted a condition regarding the concession building. The proposal included basically replacing the concession building at the same dimension. And the thought staff had is, should today's requirements for restrooms, for example, require slightly different square footage, we didn't want the board's action to preclude that. So I think that you would see that there was language in there that indicated if the commercial building code dictated different standard, and frankly, that what could come into play is public health requirements as well. We wouldn't anticipate that Mr. Block and the church would want something significantly different, but if it departs from the exact footprint, we just wanted to make provision for that.
Very good. Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Wozniak?
I got a few items I want to discuss at some point, but.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Okay, why are we, on the, I'm jumping here to item page 6.1A, item 2, the hours of operation from April 1st to October 31st. Why are we putting that restriction on them?
Well, that was discussed last month, and initially that basically they proposed a April to November, but it wasn't clear exactly when, what dates, and there was discussion of that, and I guess what was agreed upon by the board last month, and the applicant didn't object, was that April 1st to October 31st. You know, it's at your discretion to adjust that if you see reason to do so.
It was
Pardon?
what the applicant asked for, basically, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, they were a little fuzzy on the exact dates, and so we had a little discussion to kind of narrow down, well, what do we mean by this?
I guess my thought is, you know, this is a commercial entity, and I'm just curious whether other drive-ins have operating restrictions like, you know, monthly restrictions like that, and I just, you know, if the weather turns good in February and he wants to open up, he can't do that now if we put this in place like this. So I guess I'm in favor of deleting the April 1st to October 31st restriction.
Next point.
Let's see here. Item 7, the stormwater management plan. Well, a couple along that same line, I saw in here the 200 feet for the driveway. What makes 200 feet the magic number on item 6?
Basically, that was a decision that to pave, to avoid gravel, dust being pulled out onto the road, onto Main Street. the idea was that a certain distance back should be paved on the access and egress. Now that it's down to just the north driveway, it would just be the north driveway. There isn't anything necessarily magic about 200 feet. It just gives you a little more if it rains during a performance and people are departing. Just gives you a little more area for anything to drop off the wheels of the vehicles before they depart the site. I don't see a lot of issue with that as the site is currently laid out, because most of those drive aisles, there's not a lot of loose gravel anyways.
Okay, so as a result of putting the driveway in, then that would require the stormwater management plan as item 7?
Correct. And currently with the proposal, there wasn't really information provided on stormwater management. The site's been there for 60 years basically, and so the drainage pattern is pretty established, and the underlying soils are fairly porous, so it drains pretty well. But the thinking is, if things are changed on site, at least that ought to be evaluated. So it might not necessarily need to be an extensive stormwater plan, but I think there would be just some discussions with staff to see if anything would need to be done.
Okay. Well, my thought process is that we could probably use something like bluestone or some other, crushed rock type surface that would remain porous and therefore keep the dust under control and not have to worry about dragging stuff out onto the roadway. And then I think those were the biggies. Let me take one more quick look through my notes here. Yeah, those are the big ones I had, Buck.
Do you have another list of small ones, Joe?
No, that's it for now, but we're not done yet.
Okay. How about you, Dave Nickum? Do you have any questions? No, sir. Mr. Peterson? Well, then we might be poised to close the hearing and proceed to decision-making. Anything more you think should be said, Mr. Wozniak?
Just two things real quick. One is, because only the north entrance is being used, there was a little ticket building proposed off of the proposed reopened south driveway. It wasn't entirely clear to us what Mr. Block is going to do with where the ticketing will be handled, but we think that's an issue that they can work out with staff. It was going to be a very small structure anyways. And the other thing I would just add is the board had asked about landscaping. We did include some photos in the presentation. There's been some very nice landscaping put in. We took a closer look and examined that, and it's pretty continuous along the perimeter of the property, barring maybe the east side where the boat storage area is to the back of the property. So we don't see any issues with the landscaping and the screening.
That second driveway issue is the other one I just missed in my notes here. It's my contention that since there was a second driveway there before, that I don't see why we couldn't grandfather that second driveway in to be allowed to reopen that at their convenience, but we can discuss that.
Mr. Chair, on that, I could just speak. On the driveway, there is a little bit of issue of spacing, and the issue was more if they had two driveways, how would they manage the traffic? Because if at the end of the evening you had vehicles exiting both driveways at the same time, you'd have the potential for conflict, especially for southbound traffic. So that was really the point of discussion we were having with the applicant. And Mr. Block decided that, hey, let's just use the north driveway and then hold off a season and see if the south driveway is needed, then that can be revisited later.
I guess my thought to that was that at the end of the night, you just open one exit and then you don't have an issue with both driveways. I guess I'm trying to give the applicant as much flexibility as I can so that if they do decide to switch driveways if they want to, they've got that capability.
Mr. Isel, do you have any responses or reactions to these suggestions?
Well, I can't speak for Mr. Block, but I'm pretty sure that he would be fine with removing the operating months restriction, and that does make some logical sense, even though the weather may preclude him ever being outside those months, but I think it's good to give him that flexibility. In terms of the driveway, I think, like Mr. Wozniak has indicated, it was felt that we would, rather than dealing with the traffic issues, we would, Mr. Block would like to try just the one driveway to begin with and see if it functions effectively. If they went to two driveways, I know that it was going to be, one would be entrance, the other would be exit, and they wouldn't be used simultaneously. So, which is very similar to my understanding of the way the old drive-in functioned when it was operating some 30 years ago, so.
Mr. Wozniak, is Ms. Burrell going to be the one to manipulate the words for the changes if we make changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Do that.
Any other questions from board members before I close the hearing? All right, it's 8:22. I declare the hearing closed. Now we're ready for discussion. Let's take the issues that have been highlighted so far one at a time. First of all, the question of operating months. The applicants asked for certain months. Joe has suggested we may as well make it year-round. Do you have, I suppose your language is just that simple, Joe, right? You
Yeah, just
eliminate that.
Just
line?
eliminate that first sentence, yes.
Okay. Would that thought have support from anybody else on the board?
I understand what Joe is saying, but they have asked and the dates, and so we give them what they ask.
Well, I would support Joe. I normally don't like us to become designers of an applicant's idea, figuring that they know their own business plan and their own things far better than we ever will, but I could go along with it. How about you, Mr. Peterson? Have you made up your mind? Or is it going to be part of some grand package? of
I guess
trade-offs?
I kind of agree with Joe that, there's nothing is going to be effectively changed, I feel. So, yeah, if we just leave it out of there, would work for me.
All right. The next topic would be the length of the paved driveway. Did you want to speak, Mr. Wozniak?
Well, the comment I would make is currently our ordinance requires that driveways be paved. We were kind of viewing this because it's an existing site as a bit of a compromise to do at least enough treatment so again that traffic that's exiting in particular doesn't drag anything out onto, I'll mention newly paved Main Street. But that was the thinking staff had on that.
Well, your idea is that the driveway extends all the way back to the back of the property, huh? And so you were not going to request that the whole driveway be paved, but only 200 feet of it.
That's correct. And that way it also limits the amount of additional impervious, because those driveways are probably fairly compacted, but there is some drainage through them. It's fairly porous underneath material.
In light of that, how would you propose to amend the staff recommendation for the board's adoption, Joe?
Well, possibly just shorten it up to like from the fence line out to the road, something like that. Or possibly shorten it up to 100 feet, either one.
I guess I'm thinking that, maybe the 200-foot would make sense. What if there's a, pretty good rainstorm or something there when they're all in there watching the movie, and when they leave, there's gonna be probably a fair amount of tracking, I would assume, from where they're parked there, so that's just my thought.
You have a thought, Dave?
The county requires that the driveway, a certain, when you enter property, be paved. Do they have a stipulation on how many feet?
No, I mean, it's just that they're required to be paved.
Yeah, because other applicants have discussed about paving, and I know it's a requirement. I don't know, I guess 200 feet or 100 feet, I know it's just got to be paved, so I don't have any.
Would it make sense to have a statement, something to the effect that paving sufficient to eliminate tracking, and if it wasn't working out, then it could always be revised, rather than putting a specific length on it? That would be my thought.
Yeah,
Mr. Wozniak will be charged with going out there and checking from 2 a.m. Every rainy night, and reporting back to us if the paving needs to be extended.
I was thinking of perhaps complaints from residents.
My own view is that we ought to stick with the 200. We have fought battles before, and it's very common for commercial owners to not want to have to pay, because it sometimes is a very significant part of their expense. I'm thinking of storage facilities, those road bills. I'm thinking of the one that we had to litigate up on CC there a few years ago, And I guess I'd like to, my bet would be to say 200 is enough of a compromise. But I'm not necessarily trying to change anybody's mind, I'm just trying to give you a hint of where I would go. So let's bring it up. Are you making a motion, Joe, to amend the staff report to make it 100 feet?
well, I'd almost kind of like Dave's idea of putting something in there that would give them a little bit of flexibility. But, if everybody wants 200 feet, I'm not going to throw a fit over it.
I guess on that, we have enough votes to make it. Let's turn to the next topic then, which is giving them the flexibility to use the second driveway, if and when they choose to do it. Whoops, microphone. So that proposal is to give them the flexibility to use the second driveway. I presume they'd have to pave 200 feet of it, but when and if they choose to do it.
Driveways are wonderful, but driveways are a headache. They cause problems of safety, problems with snow, problems with, like we talked about, dragging stuff out. But driveways are dangerous. But of course, if you can't have a driveway, you can't even get on the road. So you got to use a little common sense. But if they don't need an extra driveway, driveways are trouble. But if they need an extra driveway, they have to get on the road.
Spoken like a guy with a highway background there. Yes. Now, this is one that doesn't require culverts, I believe. There are no culverts there. So that simplifies it somewhat. But it's also one that has a concentrated group of folks leaving it all at one time, which is somewhat problematic. But then conceivably, I don't know why if they had two driveways available to them, they would use, oh, I understand now. I was going to say they could use the north driveway for those people who are northbound and the south for those who are southbound. But then they'd have to cross within the property. That could really be problematic. Yeah, so it makes sense it would be either one or the other.
Well, like I say, my point was to just give them the flexibility without having to come back to the board or, you know, jump through all the hoops of trying to either reestablish a second driveway or open one and close the other.
And there is a precedent, you pointed out. There has been a second driveway used in the past there. Mr. Wozniak, do we still have this one down for a one-year review? I thought I remembered that our decision the other day said the staff would prepare a report in about a year and come back to the board with it.
Yeah, I think that was the intent. I mean, strictly speaking, regarding the driveway, it may not be absolutely necessary for that purpose. The two driveways may be permitted, and the discretion about waiving the separation requirement is something that's within the authority of the zoning administrator myself. So, but I was just gonna take a quick look at our conditions to see if we flagged that year review. I think it was referenced in here, if memory serves me.
Our normal county spacing on driveways is 200 feet. How much separation is there between these two driveways?
200 feet is the requirement, and, you know, currently it's, what's that? It's about 100, yeah.
About 100 feet.
And the issue is if you make it 200, then you're getting too close to the property, the driveway that serves the property to the south. So, you know, roughly where it comes out is, if it were to be reestablished, is a logical place. There's already a gate there in the fence. It would involve taking less of the quality landscaping out as well. So that's, my thinking is, as long as the circulation is such that the traffic, if it were to be established, the traffic goes in one entrance and out the other, so that you're not having people exit both at the same time. Even enter both at the same time might be a little confusing because they're fairly close. Maybe it works with the one and they don't, for the size, realizing the size of this is probably half of what it was previously. So maybe the one driveway works fine.
What do you mean the size is half of what it was?
Well,
oh, because the property used to be so much deeper
correct.
to the east.
Yes. So instead of 200 spaces for parking, I don't know, it might have had 400 or 500 back in the day, 30 years ago when it was still operating. Probably it would have been similar to the size of the Valley View in Lake Elmo. Valley High, I guess it's called.
The gentleman that was not in favor of this owns the property across the street. Is there a driveway into that property?
There is a driveway. I
Is
don't
that
think
right
it lines
across
up
from
with
this?
the driveway of the north exit from the theater. The property, the topography, it drops down considerably on that property. The issue would be in terms of night, when folks are leaving and exiting, that's when the headlights, as a access onto Main Street, would be shining across. And our thinking on this is that if there is residential construction on that property to the west, that because of the topography, the dwellings would be low enough where it really wouldn't, those headlights wouldn't be much of an issue. I think his comment was, well, you'd have to plant some trees on my side of the road to address that particular issue. And I guess I would agree with it if you were trying to stop light from shining across the road as people were exiting the site. The board didn't conclude something was necessary last month for additional landscaping.
But he doesn't know exactly where his house is even going to be placed, does he?
No.
If my memory served me correctly, he was leaning towards the north side of the property line, almost right across from the second driveway entrance. But like I say, construction hasn't started yet, so who knows if it's going to be reality.
And last month, we're not calling for more plantings, but we were not planning on using the south driveway either, as I recall. Well, what is your pleasure, board members? And Sarah, have you got these, you got the words up so you can make the changes? Mrs. Burrell?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Well, I guess on the driveway issue, I'd just like to be able to give him the ability to modify, you know, we could put a restriction on it that only one driveway at a time is functional. So if he decides it works out better to switch driveways, he could do that, without jumping through a lot of hoops.
All right, so looking at the screen. Can you find the one about driveways?
Number 5 there, I think, a little higher.
Mr. Peterson thinks it's number 5. Oh. Oh, yeah.
It's 5 because it's been crossed out in the narrative, or in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, 5 and 6 reference the driveway, but essentially, since they had taken the south driveway out of the proposal, asked that that be removed, we weren't sort of recognizing it, identifying it as being part of the request at this time.
So you could put it back in, couldn't you?
Sure.
Is that your motion, Joe?
Yeah, I'd like to just make the motion that the applicant only use one driveway, but the second driveway would be available if he desires to use it, and close the other one.
So the exact words will be,
Oh, I'm not an English major.
no, but you're the maker of the motion.
Let's see. The applicant would be allowed to use both driveways, but
Does your
only,
computer not work, Mrs. Burrell?
Doesn't seem to be.
let's see.
Can you help her, Julie? Or can you take over?
These don't work. You make the change because the selection is lost.
Mouse is working.
Did I make a change on that computer, Julie?
If you want to write out by hand what your words are, that
Yeah.
may
That might be the thing to
get it
do.
ready to serve up in the
Yeah.
most efficient
So
manner.
the tab works.
Let's see.
it's just You can't make the selection because the selection is locked. I don't know what that means. there's not a license on this computer for Microsoft Word.
Unfortunately, it's only a rental, right? You pay for it every month, right? You're able
I'll
to buy
message
it?
IT, but, can I pull it up on
Oh,
mine
Windows
and make the
has it.
change, have it printed?
I thought you said Microsoft Word. Oh, Windows. Oh,
Mr. Chair, if I could just make a comment that I think the thinking of the applicant, the operator, Mr. Block, was if there's a need for the south driveway, that he would use both driveways and not just one, but manage that traffic where the traffic entering the site prior to the movie would be doing it through one driveway and then exiting through the other. And so if the condition is going to be modified, I would suggest that to reflect that would probably be the most logical thing to do.
all right.
Yeah, I just want to, give him the flexibility. If he decides he wants to change the driveways, he can, but only use one at a time.
Is that what
So-
you're,
By one at a time, pardon, are you thinking, again, enter one, exit the other, and not have them used concurrently when people are coming to the site or leaving the site?
There's no license.
Yeah, if he decides the north driveway isn't working out, he can close that one and open the south one. Something to, the applicant will be allowed to open both driveways, but be limited to one driveway use at a time, or something along those lines.
sir?
I believe what the operator would do the south driveway would be ingress, and the north driveway would be egress at all time, but not, in other words, traffic flows in, and they'll come in the south driveway, and the exit's closed at that time. But on that same evening, they would close the south driveway and open the north for exit. But they're not going to be coming out or going in both driveways at the same time. Follow me? So the south driveway, if he adds it, would be the ingress.
Yeah,
And
right.
And then the north driveway would become the egress.
Yeah.
As he is going to try this first year, is that the north driveway serves as ingress when he opens and egress when he closes.
Yeah, I've just got to figure out how to word it that way.
So maybe it could be the applicant may use both driveways, but only one at a time. Pardon?
Yeah, I'd go, yeah, that sounds good to me.
Are we able to edit?
Not on the screen. She can edit it on the computer and then print it for you.
Okay, so can you add this sentence? The applicant may use both driveways, but only one at a time.
Done.
And did you get the language for the other two changes?
I did not. What were those?
The one was about how much to pave, and the other was eliminating the months of operation limitation.
So that would be condition number 2.
That's correct, just delete that first
Delete
sentence.
the first sentence, okay, that's deleted. And then condition number 6 would read,
Well, actually, I guess we ended up with 3 votes to leave that the same, didn't we?
oh,
Yeah. I guess that was a close one, but we compromised by keeping it. All right, I believe those are the only changes. We are probably ready for the motion to adopt as modified.
I would like to speak first, if that's okay.
Why, certainly.
I do not support the driveway proposal. As I mentioned, driveways are trouble. It's already been stated that people will come at pretty much at one time, and they will all leave at one time. Consequently, I don't see the need for a second driveway. Plus, it's going to raise the cost of operation if he has to pave 200 feet in both driveways. That's just my personal opinion.
All right. The motion to adopt this modified proposal comes from whom?
I'll make a motion, we adopt the proposal with the changes we've discussed.
Yep, second.
I'll second, and I would like one clarification before we vote.
Certainly. And other discussion, if any. Go ahead.
On item 5, we talked about he could use one driveway or the other, but if I'm reading that as it exists, would require him to pave the second driveway. And in fact, if he decides not to use the second driveway, should we have a requirement there, or should we state that he wouldn't have to pave that if he didn't use it?
Well, I think he wouldn't need to pave it until he decides to open it up and actually use it, you know, but before he could open it up and actually use it, he'd have to pave it, that would be my position.
So can you, Mrs. Burrell, in 5 there, that sentence that reads the first 200 feet of each driveway, could you put in the words, "that is used shall be paved"? That catches the idea? Yep, it's triggered by the applicant's, the requirement to pave is only triggered by the applicant's decision to use the second driveway.
Yes. done.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. We may have a dissenting vote, but here goes. All in favor of the motion, vote aye.
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 And those opposed, vote nay. Okay, it passed 3-1. Go ahead and prepare it, print it, I'll sign it, and we'll be underway. Mr. Wozniak, the next matter. Do you say this name Clouthier or Cloutier, or how do they like to pronounce their name? Cloutier.
Cloutier.
Thank you. We evidently have, who's here for the Cloutier matter?
Margaret Cloutier and Paul Aceto.
Okay, we've got 2 people in the room for that.
Okay, this item proposed by Margaret Cloutier is a conditional use permit request at 1416 Hilltop Ridge. This is a lot located in the Lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, 1.74 acres in the town of St. Joseph, Section 22. And the proposal is for construction of a lift to provide safe access to the St. Croix River. And I would note that you have in your packet material staff report and the conditional use application and addendum. The key issues here, the applicant has applied to install a lift to provide pedestrian access to the river. A lift is required due to steep slopes and unstable site conditions. This will be the only lift on the property, and it'll be located near the top of the bluff line, stretching west from the center of the property toward the river. And there are 2 landing locations, one on the top and one on the bottom of the hill. Both will be constructed to the minimal amount necessary to provide safe ingress, egress from the car of the lift. These graphics show basically the property. This drawing was, I believe, when the house was either constructed or renovated, and you could see overlaid on an aerial photo the layout of the lot. It basically is north of a cul-de-sac and has a driveway that kind of winds around to access the front of the house. Regarding the lift construction, the proposed location, as shown in this aerial photo with a alignment for the proposed lift, it would avoid the alignment would avoid removal of trees to the maximum extent. However, vegetation removal will occur for installation of the lift. And if revegetation is necessary to provide visual screening, the property owner will supplement with native vegetation plantings. And the lift will be powder coated in earth tone, non-reflective color. Just a couple photos here. This is near where the top of the lift, the landing for the top would be. This is looking down across an area of the backyard behind the house. You see the trees where basically the photo to the left, that landing area would be somewhere down in this area. I'll note that the applicant has done a really nice job with native plant materials, prairie grasses and forbs in that backyard, and really environmentally sensitive treatment. The photos provided by the applicant down at the water level give you an indication of roughly where the landing will, the point it would come down to. The car of the lift would be limited to 4 by 6 feet, designed for pedestrian transportation. There will not be a canopy or roof on the car of the lift. These lifts are regulated by the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services. They're actually inspected and at the time of installation and annually. And a permit and inspection for electrical components is required by the town. The town of St. Joseph recommended approval of this CP at its August 13th meeting, and we have not received any comments as of yet from the Wisconsin DNR. The action you are to consider would be to grant a conditional use permit subject to the provisions of section 17.70, 7 subparagraph A, the 4 provisions noted on this slide. And your action, you can consider approval, denial, or tabling the request. We've indicated, included in the staff report, proposed findings. And I'll just hit a couple key ones. I'm not going to read through all of these. The applicant filed, number 4, the applicant filed an application with the Board of Adjustment for the conditional use permit to construct a lift, again, according to the previously referenced ordinance provision. The lift is for pedestrian access due to steep and unstable conditions. And the lift is designed for pedestrian transportation, not to transport boats or machinery. I think the key thing here is the limited vegetation removal for the lift is required and shall be confined to 1 foot on either side of the lift route and up to 8 feet above the lift floor. And native plantings will be installed if natural vegetation does not effectively screen the lift from the river within 5 years. Owners plan to preserve the natural landscape. And I was on the site along with Sarah Burrell, our specialist on our staff, and I can attest to the environmentally sensitive treatment that the applicant has given to the property. In terms of staff recommendation on this, based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, staff recommend approval of the conditional use permit for a lift with the following conditions for the board's consideration. And again, I won't read through all of these. I'm sure the board has spent time with them. Just calling out a couple that I think are pertinent. Number 2, if the lower landing of the lift is located within the floodplain, then all necessary approvals and or permits pertaining to section .40 floodplain overlay district shall be required prior to commencing construction of the lift. And again, the limit on the size of the upper and lower landings to 48 square feet. And also a provision that all lift components shall be securely anchored to ensure safety and prevent them from shifting, from soil disturbance, and from future erosion according to professional engineer certification. Regarding that, we have a provision in here that within 30 days of completing construction, the applicant shall submit to the zoning administrator certification from an engineer, surveyor, or project agent that the lift has been constructed in accordance with the approved plans, including details of installation specific to this project. At that, if there are any questions regarding any of the other of the 15 proposed conditions, staff is available to answer those. And the applicant is here today and may wish to comment or be available to field any questions they could better answer.
Board members, any questions?
Yeah, let's say they get halfway down the hill of their construction and decide that they run into something like a really weak sand pocket or something that wouldn't support the pilings. How do you deal with that?
Well, I have some experience, quite a bit of experience dealing with these in the prior position I had with Goodhue County in Minnesota, where there were a number of them built along the bluffs along the Mississippi River, and sometimes normally the impact is pretty minimal with these, where the steel is driven into the ground, and it's pretty minimal impact. There are alternative types of footings that are sometimes used when the conditions are less stable. If they were run into a situation like that, I mean, there is a requirement for certification by an engineer on this, and essentially they may have to, the party constructing the lift might have to consult with their engineer if they were to run into those kinds of conditions. That's about as much as I can give you at this point.
In the results or the proposal there, I know erosion is addressed, but there's no reference into, it's quite a steep slope, so I'm wondering if we would want to address the manner in which future erosion would be prevented by, whether it would be matting or something until the grass or whatever is established enough to keep it from washing.
Sure. The impact with these construction of these lifts is typically less than, say, a stairway. because the profile is fairly narrow. And the establishment, checking on the establishment of the vegetation is probably the key thing that staff would be doing on this. And in terms of, are you suggesting requesting a specific erosion sedimentation plan from the applicant?
No, that's not my intention. It's just to make sure that you know that, you know, it's being properly handled.
Sure. You know, I think probably, I think the best way to do that is to, upon installation, is to inspect and see confirm what kind of impact to the best degree we can. Once it's installed, of course, I suppose we could have the homeowner allow us to ride up and down the lift and check it out that way. These are very steep slopes and very challenging to negotiate.
On item 2 there, you know, if the lower landing of the lift is located within the floodplain, wouldn't the engineering drawings prior to installation point that out?
Yeah, you know, we've had some discussions with the contractor involved in this project, and they install a lot of these lifts, and interestingly enough, they've said this has never been an issue for them, and they do, on these lifts, they typically keep their electrical control components a little higher up so that if there's inundation, if there's a high water level of the river, you're not having some of that components of the lift underwater for a prolonged period. I mean, it's designed to be able to handle the elements, but in a prolonged high water period, that's maybe the biggest concern. Of course, the other issue is, will the lift, just like what can happen with docks, if it somehow breaks loose and creates a hazard, that's typically the other kind of concern. These lifts are typically, my experience is that hasn't been a big problem with lifts, but yeah, I mean, we did ask for that. The thing is, there may have to be some survey work to confirm that, and we would expect that as part of that certification.
Okay, is there anything in the floodplain overlay district regulations that would prevent them from being able to use this thing when it's all done? If it does end up in the floodplain?
There isn't. It is a water-oriented use, and so there are provisions for water-oriented uses. You know, docks being another example where sometimes they have a landing above the ordinary high water mark and then extend down, and so there's nothing that would preclude that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any trees that are going to be removed here, or did I miss that? Or?
Yeah, there would be some trees. The applicants indicated the goal is for that to be minimal. I don't know if they would have anything to add when they comment.
Just a comment that this.
Please.
If you could.
Identify yourself for the record, please, and speak into that microphone.
Paul Aceto, and I'm a resident at 1416 Hilltop Ridge. So if you had a view of this property from either our lot or from the Minnesota side, you cannot see the river from the property. This is still in its original native shape. So there has been zero tree removal. There is zero view. Our intention, because of our desires to keep it natural, would be to absolutely minimize the number of trees that would be impacted. I don't think that's a realistic, that there's going to be zero. I can imagine, but there may be some pathways down there that we find that are optimized for continuing with the natural landscape that's existing there.
So you roughly run a line, imaginary line or whatever out, and there's not many trees in the way, is that what you're saying?
No, the entire area has not been touched. So to run that line down, we will try to optimize that so that we would have minimal impact. But I can't stand here and say that I know that there will be no trees or removed, but we will work to make sure that there is the absolute minimum impact.
Mr. Wozniak, I don't understand recommendation 7. All parts of the lift, including the transporting device and power source, shall be visually inconspicuous immediately or made to be within 5 years using native plantings. What happens between immediately and 5 years, and why that long? That seems obviously excessive to me, assuming that construction will start in the next construction season, 2021.
I think the idea is if it can be constructed so that it is immediately inconspicuous based on the vegetation being left, but if there's a need to either it will fill in, anything that's been cut might fill in on its own within 5 years, or they would be planting native vegetation to address that. I think that's the goal here.
You're using the visually inconspicuous term in the same sense as the St. Croix overlay ordinance?
Yes, I think that's the thinking here.
That's the intention here, yeah. And I take it that the landing will be of the same earth tone colors per the requirement for all structures. Landings, actually, upper and lower.
Mr. Chair, could Kevin Graybill make a comment?
Certainly.
Yep, with your last question on that, what number 7 up there, Mike pegged it, he nailed it with the answer, but that language, it doesn't have the transporting device and the power source, but that thought is taken directly from the ordinance, so that's a requirement of the ordinance. If it's not immediately inconspicuous, it needs to be made so within 5 years. So that's why that's in there.
Any other questions?
So the actual landing itself then may be conspicuous, it's just you're trying to hide the tracks and all the other associated hardware that goes with it?
The landing also is covered by, because it's a structure, it's got to be visually inconspicuous also.
The colors of the materials have to be earth tones that blend on the actual equipment. I think the alignment of the lift, the idea is to essentially not have a scar or straight line up the bluff, left clearly visible to the greatest, to have that blend to the greatest degree possible.
You did take my point that the landings also need to be earth toned.
Yes.
Good. Okay, any other questions there? Anything else the applicants want to say? Has it been sufficiently explained and you're in agreement with the staff recommendation?
Yes, thank you, and I want to thank the board for their time and consideration of this issue.
No questions? Anybody else want to speak in favor of this application? Is there anybody in the room who's opposed to it or has any other comments to give the board about this application? I'm on the verge of closing the hearing with respect to this application, which would signal the end of public input. And I do close the hearing at 9:10 then. So, board members, were your questions answered to your satisfaction, or have you some proposals for changes of the staff recommendation? Mr. Peterson? None here. Mr. Miller?
No, I'm happy with the way it is.
Mr. Nickum? Okay, who wants the glory of making the motion? Your name will live forever.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Peterson, Nickum. Any further discussion at all? All in favor of approving in accordance with the staff recommendation, now vote aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Decision is unanimous. It's 9:11. Let's see, we started at 8. And the next one up is mainly about a deck. So I propose that we take a break here until 9:20. We are in recess. Ready to work, but waiting on the IT side of things.
I think we're ready to go, Mr. Chair, when you're ready.
Proceed.
Very good. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a conditional use permit request. This request is from Warren and Deborah Berkeley, and with their agent Derek Holmes LLC. And the property involved is at 1450 Triangle Drive. This is also in the town of St. Joseph, Section 22. I'll note that the zoning is in the lower St. Croix Riverway overlay district, and the site size is 2.8 acres. The request involves a request for filling and grading 10,000 square feet or more outside of the slope preservation zone pursuant to Chapter 17.36 F3A6. And included with the materials you were provided were the staff report that I'm going through, conditional use application, and stormwater and erosion control revisions. Just a bit of history and review on this. The property has a single-family residence that does not comply with the bluffland setbacks and therefore is non-conforming. And the private on-site wastewater treatment system was replaced in September of 2019. The existing septic and well will be utilized for the new home to be constructed. The proposed home will require a county sanitary permit to connect to the existing system. The applicant has applied to fill and grade 10,000 square feet or more outside of the slope preservation zone, and the total amount of disturbance proposed is 19,503 square feet. Now, the request involves removal of an existing home and construction of a new home that complies with the reduced bluffline setback. All other setbacks will be met, including the additional performance standards and to construct within 100 within the 100-foot bluffline setback, but no closer than 40 feet to the bluffline. The new house is proposed to be approximately 58 feet from the bluffline at its closest point and will not protrude above the bluffline. I'll note that a land use permit was not submitted in conjunction with the CUP, but prior to site disturbance, the land use permit would be required. And basic stormwater and erosion sediment control plans have been submitted and reviewed with the CUP. The complete stormwater plans required by ordinance will be required and approved by staff prior to any site disturbance as part of the land use permit process. Just a look at the site here. Again, they're anticipating 19,503 square feet of area involved with the grading. This would not require a DNR permit since it's less than an acre. And the 40-foot setback is shown in red, and the bluffline setback, 58 feet. Again, the structure does not protrude above the bluffline. And the setback from ordinary high water mark be 277 feet. And side yard setbacks, they're showing of 46 feet. I would note that 6 trees have been identified to be removed for the new house construction. The vegetation removal within the slope preservation zone is not allowed by ordinance, nor has it been requested by the applicant. Removal of the existing home will result in removal of vegetation adjacent to the slope preservation zone. This will be replaced with native vegetation. And a stormwater management plan and erosion and sediment control plan, again, has been submitted. The Town of St. Joseph has not submitted a recommendation for this application, and we have not received comments from the Wisconsin DNR. The action on this would be conditional uses shall only be granted by the board if the board finds that granting the conditional use permit will meet the 5 criteria listed here. And I would note that the board's options are to recommend approval of the request, to actually approve the request, deny the request, or table or postpone the decision to absorb information gathered or request additional information. Now, we've identified a number of findings of fact. I won't read through all of these, but just maybe highlight some key ones. Again, I'd clarify that the reason for the request is to fill and grade greater than 10,000 square feet outside of the slope preservation zone. The land use permit hasn't been filed, but would have to be submitted prior to any site disturbance. I would note that the proposed residential use is designed to conform to the standards in section .17.36 and therefore does not violate the spirit or intent of the St. Croix County Lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District. And other key points, I would just clarify that subject to the proposed conditions in this number 12, that again, filling and grading activities have been designed in a manner to minimize erosion and sedimentation. The removal of the existing house, obviously the grade has to be adjusted slightly and matched as well to the surrounding grade as possible. The county sanitary permit will be required to connect the proposed home to the existing pout system installed last September. And vegetation removal for construction of the new home and attached garage will be limited to the area within the approved land disturbance limits to fill and grade. We've included staff recommendation with a number of conditions. Again, many of these implement issues identified in the findings of fact. I would note that just calling out anything else here. The Wisconsin DNR stormwater construction technical standards shall be implemented, reviewed, and approved by the Community Development Department staff prior to any site disturbance. And in particular, I call out disturbance for the existing house removal shall be replaced with native vegetation. A native plant buffer shall extend parallel to the bluff line. And at that, I won't again read through all of these. I'm sure the board has done so of the 11 conditions in the staff recommendation, but staff are available to field any questions you may have.
Questions, board members?
Yeah, do you know was the new sanitary system installed with the intent of hooking up to the new house so it's big enough to accommodate the house?
If anybody is to speak, they need to, if anyone is to speak, they need to sign and then speak from the microphone.
I'm going to have Sarah Burrell, who was the lead on this report, just address that issue if that's been dealt with.
Yes, Sarah Burrell here. The system was sized for a 3-bedroom home, I believe. And they would require a county reconnect permit. So that would be verified at time of county reconnect permit application. It would be verified that the home that's being proposed does not exceed the number of bedrooms that the system is sized for. I guess I should put it as that way.
Satisfied, Mr. Miller? Mr. Wozniak, I believe there is a 35-foot height limit on a new house built in the Riverway, measuring from undisturbed ground. How does the staff make sure that this filling and grading is not a subterfuge for raising the house above 35 feet?
We, of course, we can, we would receive the house plans with the sanitary permit, I believe, and could evaluate that issue with their specific design, I think at that time. You know, I have looked at that language, and it's something we could certainly talk about the height from the existing grade. And I'm not sure it's so clear that it's not, if grading is allowed, it's not measured from the resulting grade. Of course, with these requests, it's at the discretion of the board whether, how much grading or alteration of the site you choose to allow.
So you're relying on the board to come up with language to make sure that the St. Croix Overlay District ordinance is followed?
Well, I've looked at the state rules, and I've looked at our ordinance, and our ordinance language mimics the state rules.
Oh, Ms. Burrell.
If I may, the applicant did provide survey grade plans that do not appear to be showing that they're adjusting the grade. And they did provide a cross-section protrusion from the bluff line 250 feet from the ordinary high water mark, which does show that it will not protrude above the bluff line, as well as maintaining that 35-foot. But those pre- and post-construction contours that were provided are not changing. They're not raising the new area, I guess I should say.
Those
based on
materials were in your packet.
Yes.
Oh, I looked at them. Of course, the protrusion above the bluff line is one requirement, and the 35 feet from undisturbed soil is another requirement. And I'm only addressing the other one. And you're telling me that you have looked at the survey they provided and can map it on the ground and compare it to the corners of their proposed structure and thereby determine that it will not be 35 feet above the grade before the grading and filling occurs. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's all I need to know.
Very good.
Does anybody else want to speak in favor of this application? If the applicants or their agents wish to disagree with anything in the staff recommendation, now would certainly be the time. If you just agree with it, it's not necessary to say so.
Deborah Berkeley, Warren Berkeley. We just wanted to extend some appreciation to Sarah and the staff because since we moved in December, I think we've pestered her probably more than anyone. Due diligence, patience, and working with various people on this. I just wanted to express, and then the site visits also from the staff So we're just very appreciative, and I know, Mr. Peterson, you were out too, looking at the site, so we appreciate that, and we just wanted to extend our appreciation no matter what the outcome, so thank you.
And I'll just add one thing. We're new to river living, so we're learning all of this as we go along, but we have appreciated all the help. Other than that, as a good man, you always go along with your wife and just say ditto.
Ditto, yep, yep. As the old saying goes, I always manage to get the last word in. Yes, dear. Mhm. Good, well, thank you for the compliments to the staff. We're proud of them ourselves. They don't actually report to the Board of Adjustment, but we lean heavily on them for all of their expertise. We like to think that staff go out from here to other counties and other jobs, having been trained here and stepping in at higher levels wherever they go. I have no other questions. Well, I need to ask the rest of the room, I guess. Is there anybody else who wants to speak in favor? Anybody to speak against this application? Anybody to say anything at all that they think will help the board to make a better decision than to follow the staff recommendation with whatever ideas we currently have? I don't see any hands going up, so unless board members have thought of a question they want to ask the staff or something. Go ahead.
Is the current house seen from the river? And will this house be seen from the river more?
This one will not stick up above the bluff line. There's, if I may address your question, there's a picture in here that shows that the bluff sticks out there and the house is back here, and from 250 feet out, the line passes over the roof of the house.
Okay.
So by reason of the topography, it cannot be seen from the river. So it's not relying on vegetation, trees and the like for screening. Thank you to your sensitivity to that. As we all know, the fact that we've got a sort of a national park out here means that counties like St. Croix County have to enforce a viewpoint viewed from the water. The thought is that the nation's citizens who created the Wild and Scenic Riverway here valued the view of the boater or the water user sometimes more than the values of the resident along the river. And so that view from the water, it is our duty to protect, as well as things like water quality through erosion and bank slumpage and other factors. But that's why this center of the river or 250 feet line is important with new construction or with remodeling. Yeah. So in this instance, we don't even have to get into things like the color, I guess, if we don't want to. I meant to ask you earlier in connection with the other case, Mr. Wozniak, did they show you the palette of safe harbor colors when you came on board?
Yes, and we have a drawing with those, or a graphic of those posted in a prominent place.
That was something that was done in cooperation by a number of municipalities and the two DNRs just a few years ago, so that people who had a question of what exactly is an earth tone or summer vegetation color could at least have a list of colors. The Pantone company makes one, and there are others, but those were carefully chosen as safe harbor colors. If you pick them from that list, there's no question they are allowed under the law. Other colors might be allowed, but it's up to the homeowner to satisfy the board that that color that they propose, which isn't on the list, is acceptable. And red never is.
Mr. Chair and board members, I've also found with a recent site visit I was on with that it's sometimes the digital photography is a little tricky because you see a picture and it might not truly represent the color of the materials used. And so sometimes you have to trust your eyes and go out and look at it, because the pictures depends on the light, depends on how good the camera is. We tend to think our cameras are perfect, but what I found is sometimes even on the same house, one side might look different than the other if you take a picture because of the light on it, how much shade. So there's a little bit of art and a little bit of science involved.
Good show, but the safe harbor list
That's straightforward.
that's straightforward. Well, with that little deviation there, it sounds to me like there are no issues that would call for a change in the staff recommendation for our approval. We agree with the analysis and the proposed findings and conclusions evidently. If that's the case, I'll take the glory of making the motion on this one. Who wants to second it?
I'll second it.
Mr. Miller? Okay. Did I close the hearing? Maybe I didn't. Oh, I better do that before I call for a vote. It's 9:44 and I hereby declare the hearing closed. Any further discussion before we proceed with voting on the motion? All in favor should vote aye.
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 All opposed should vote nay. And the decision is unanimous. Thank you. Print it out and I'll sign it. And we have one more for this morning, right? And then we're gonna have a little closed session for, well, I don't know how little it'll be, but we'll have a closed session. And this is the Wallace matter, and it's using the same contractor. And the property is in the same neighborhood. But this is the replacement of a lift on the same property.
I'd note that that's correct. I just, since I overlooked on the prior lift proposal, the Cloutier request, I just want to note our staff person, land use specialist, Ann Wodarczyk. Ann's our newest staff member and worked on that report and is doing a great job for us. She's really caught on quickly. I overlooked calling her out at the beginning of the meeting, so I'd just like to do so now. And so you know, Ann's sitting in the corner back here.
What did you say your last name is?
Wodarczyk,
How do you spell that?
Wodarc, ZYK.
I spoke over you, I'm afraid. WODAR.
ZYK.
I grew up in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, so both Wozniak and Wodarczyk are names that were familiar to me. Welcome aboard, yes, as Mr. Peterson says.
Yeah, a lot of folks of Polish heritage. for sure.
Yeah. So where did Ms. Wodarczyk learn her trade? Or is she learning it here?
She's learned in some different places. She actually was doing some GIS work for 3M. She's worked for the Pierce County NRCS and did some work with the city of Red Wing as well. Has a planning degree, and she's a great addition to our staff.
Excellent. Very good. Let's hear about the Wallace application.
Very good. Mark Wallace is requesting a construction of a lift to provide safe access, actually replacement, taking an existing lift out that is in, I guess, deemed not repairable at this point. And replacing at 1404 Hilltop Ridge, town of St. Joseph. This is just a couple, maybe 3 properties south of the other lift proposal that you considered during this meeting. You have had a staff report and conditional use application materials provided to you. The history on this, a house had previously existed. A county land use permit was approved in 2018 to construct a new house on the property. The conditions of the land use permit required stormwater and erosion and sediment control plans. The existing septic system was inspected in 2018 and found to be code compliant. And on July 13, 2020, a site inspection by staff was conducted and revegetation of the construction site was compliant. Regarding the lift construction, the applicants applied to install a lift, again, to provide pedestrian access to the river, required because of steep slopes and unstable site conditions. There will only be one lift on the property. The existing lift along the north property boundary will be removed due to safety concerns, and the new lift will not be constructed in the same location as the existing lift. The existing is pretty close to the property line, and there's a couple reasons why to move it, but that's one of them. The existing lift supports will be cut off at the ground surface and will not be reused. The new lift would be located approximately 50 to 60 feet south of the north property boundary, and there will be 2 landing locations, one near the top of the bluff and one at the bottom. They'll be constructed to the minimal amount necessary to provide safe ingress and egress from the car or the lift. The upper landing will be 6 feet by 8 feet, and the lower lift area will use the elevated platform of the existing dock system for the landing. And these are just some photos of the existing lift track here. This is a sketch drawing that shows at the north end of the property the existing tram alignment and approximate alignment of the proposed. Again, connecting to an existing landing of the dock. This is a shot from the top roughly where the landing would go. The intent is to work with the contractor works with the alignment to minimize any vegetation removal to the maximum extent possible. Again, if revegetation is necessary to provide visual screening, the property owner will supplement with native vegetation plantings, and the lift will be an earth tone brown, non-reflective color. This is just identifying a couple proposed trees to be removed. And here you see a photo of the existing dock, and there is a platform there that the lift would come down and use that as its lower landing. The car or the lift will not have a canopy or roof, and the lift will be securely anchored per engineer specifications for safety and to avoid soil disturbance and erosion. As indicated with the prior proposal, the lifts are regulated by the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services, and permit approval from DSPS is required. Lifts are inspected initially and at time of installation and annually, and a permit for inspection of the electrical components is required by the town. The town of St. Joseph recommended approval of the CUP on August 12th, 2020. We have not received any comments from the Wisconsin DNR as of yet. Your consideration of the conditional use permit is subject to provisions in section 17.70, 7A, according to the 4 paragraphs referenced on the slide. And then the Board of Adjustment, after contemplating all relevant information, may do one of the following: approve the request, deny the request, or table, postpone the decision to consider information gathered or request additional information. Regarding proposed findings of fact and conclusions, just a few highlights of this. The site is 3.5 acres, again located in the Lower St. Croix Riverway overlay district. The reference that there was a June 2018 land use permit approved by the Community Development Department staff to construct a conforming single-family residence, structural erosion control, stormwater system, and vegetation removal. And I'd note that the lift is required to provide pedestrian access to the river due to the steep and unstable site conditions. Just call out again the dimension of the car of the lift, 4x6, and limited vegetation removal for the lift is required and shall be confined to 1 foot on either side of the lift route and up to 8 feet above the lift floor. And like the last proposal, native vegetation plantings will be installed if natural vegetation does not effectively screen the lift from the river within 5 years. And I'd call out number 15, the lift component design has been certified by a registered professional engineer. I just carry on to the staff recommendation. I won't be redundant on these requirements. They mimic what you saw, some of them in the findings of fact. However, I would note that the upper landings of the lift shall be limited to 48 square feet, and the lower landing is going to use that elevated platform of the dock. Again, just to emphasize, all components of the lift shall be painted or finished in a single earth tone, non-reflective color. Colors are displayed in the Community Development Department suite, as I noted earlier. And lastly, I think I'd call out in these conditions, within 30 days of completing construction, the applicant shall submit to the zoning administrator certification from an engineer, surveyor, or project agent that the lift has been constructed in accordance with the approved plans, including details of the installation specific to this project. At that, if there's questions regarding any of the 18 conditions referenced in the staff report, staff can field those, and the applicant is present and seated behind me. Mr. Wallace could answer any questions you may have as well.
Board members, questions?
Yeah, what does a septic system inspection have to do with this application?
Well, I think the issue is, the concern is that there aren't any compliance issues with ordinance requirements.
So
if there was some violation on the property, that might be a concern in terms of allowing additional construction.
So if the septic system failed inspection, then you'd not approve this application?
Well, it could be it could be dealt with as an enforcement issue on a separate track to pursue compliance.
When people modify one thing, they need to get everything else up to snuff too.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Does the applicant wish to speak? Do you have any difference of opinion with the staff or something you want to emphasize?
Go ahead, Mr. Wall.
I also would just like to thank Mike and Sarah and Kevin and Ann for their support. It's not an easy process to maneuver, and so they were very helpful in getting us here today. And I would also like to thank Mr. Miller and Mr. Peterson for taking the time to actually come see it for yourselves, because I think it's a unique situation. So thank you.
Good. Welcome to the Riverway, if that's what it is.
Mr. Chair, I just add that Mr. Wallace, the process was a little more tedious and time consuming than he anticipated, but we appreciate he was nevertheless patient with us and I guess satisfied with our explanation of how this process works.
Anybody else want to speak in favor of the application? How about anybody who, well, there's nobody else in the room, is there? So I guess there's nobody else to speak in opposition or in a neutral fashion to raise questions. Any more questions, board members? Otherwise, I'm going to close the hearing.
I have a question. The old lift is going to be removed. That's correct?
That is correct.
Yes, sir. The guy that built it in 1989 wants it back.
Are you going to have to remove vegetation to remove it?
No, the posts are driven straight into the ground. He'll cut them off at the ground and then pull the sections apart and remove it that way. He'll probably end up having to put it at the bottom of the river and then drive across on the ice in the winter to pick up the parts.
I did not see this, but personally, but I see in the picture, it looks a little overgrown. I just wondered if you'd have to remove vegetation to do that.
No, it is very overgrown. The existing lift is not safe, and so we haven't used it. When you use it, that tends, it'll cut off the vegetation at the level of the track, but it hasn't been used this year.
I also see you have pointed out 3 trees that'll have to be cut. Are there any more that you know of?
No, we don't know for sure that it's even 3. The builder will draw a line, literally, from the landing point and then find the location at the top where he's able to minimize impact to the vegetation.
And also the landing platform next to the river, that obviously has to be removed. Moved.
The existing platform?
Well, moved.
Oh, no, there's a...
Are you going to end up there?
There are 2 components down there. There's a section of dock that is brand new. It's a platform that is independent of the dock, and then there's a ramp from that platform down to the dock. The new tram will land at that platform. The existing tram lands at a platform that's right on the property line. It's a wooden 3-tiered deck with a shed underneath it. I don't plan to remove that because that's a useful structure.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Hey, any idea when the other homeowner plans to remove the old system? Or is it?
30 days to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me. I'll have that removed.
Nobody else questions? Yep. Okay, 10 o'clock on the dot, according to the clock on the wall, let's close the hearing. We'll make the motion to adopt the staff recommendation. Second. Mr. Peterson seconds it. Further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimously approved. Very good. Turn it up and I'll sign it. Now, we will close the room and empty the room except for Corporation Council and zoning staff. Oh, no, that's right, that's tomorrow, isn't it? Tomorrow. Well, then I guess we are in recess until tomorrow. Are there anything else to talk about? It's allowed by the fact that there's nothing on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that was listed as August 22nd.
I didn't print the revised agenda for tomorrow. September you're gonna eat all those lunches, Billy?
Cancel.
Oh, you did?
Just let me know.